Happy birthday to the hit video game Jak and Daxter. To celebrate this video game's birthday this year, we will be making a Precursor Orb prop just like this one. Let's dive into this Precursor Orb tutorial. In order to make a Precursor Orb, you will need a couple of things. First, you will need something egg-shaped. I like to use these foam Easter eggs that I got back in Easter time. You can also use rocks like I have used here. You can even use little mini foam eggs like I used here. You could even make one out of clay if you would like. There are so many options. You just need something egg-shaped and you're good to go. You will also need some waxed paper or something to set paint on. You will need toothpicks, or I suppose you could use a paintbrush if you want, but I find toothpicks to be a lot easier. You will need painter's tape. You will need a measuring tape. Yes, sorry, you will be doing math. You will need a ruler, or in this case, I'm using a protractor because it has a ruler right here. You will need something to paint with. I like to use paper towels. These also work great to correct any mistakes you make. For this tutorial, you will need 3 different types of multi-surface paint. You will need Martha Stewart's multi-surface metallic copper paint. You will need Martha Stewart's multi-surface metallic rust paint. And you will need Martha Stewart's multi-surface satin vanilla bean paint, which sounds more beautiful than it is. You may also want something to use to help support your egg. I'm going to be using this little miniature cup that just looks cute and matches the aesthetic of everything. And lastly, you will need varnish of some sort. The DuraClear High Gloss varnish is my favorite. However, depending on the batch you get, sometimes it will crack, which is unfortunate. So this also works really great. It's very durable. You can also get spray paint varieties too, all sorts of different things. Just get yourself a nice varnish. We will begin by painting our Precursor Orb with a base coat of copper metallic paint. We will take our paper towel and we will dip it in our copper paint and pat it in thin layers across the surface of our Precursor Orb. Once you have used a tapping motion to spread a thin layer of paint over the top portion of your egg, set it on your little holdy thingy and let it dry for a little bit. The reason we use a tapping motion is to prevent a streaky look when we are all done with the egg, and the reason we apply a thin layer is so that it will dry quickly and so that it doesn't end up looking globby at the end. So once this dries, we're going to flip the egg over and paint the bottom, and we'll just keep adding layers of our base coat until we are all done with the copper. After your copper paint has dried, we are going to go ahead and grab our rust color paint, and we're going to take our paper towel, and we are not going to go ahead and cover this Precursor Orb in this rust colored paint. Rather, we are going to take our paper towel and stamp it randomly and unevenly across the Precursor Orb. This will give it a little bit of a different color in different areas to create a more realistic metallic look. So go ahead and do that. You can put on a couple of coats if you want, but I usually just stick with one. It really depends on how reddish you want your orb to be. Personally, I like the look of the Jak and Daxter 1 Precursor Orbs best. I don't really like the look of the gold ones. Okay, we are going to move on to the math portion of this video. So if you don't like math, you might want to leave now. Just kidding, please don't leave. You do not need your egg holder anymore, orb holder I suppose. We are going to set our orb down flat. And it is best if you have one that has a flat bottom like this one, but not everyone will have one of those. This one rolls a bit, so we're gonna have to try to keep it at a steady angle. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to find approximately a little bit lower than the halfway point on this orb. So you can try to measure it if you'd like to be super accurate, but I'm kind of just going to eyeball it. I've determined that 2 1/4 inches is approximately a little less than halfway point up my orb. So what I'm going to do, as I have it marked here, is I'm going to go on one side of the orb and mark where the 2 1/4 point is with a little tiny dot of paint. And then I'll go on directly the opposite side and mark that height as well. Then we'll do the next step. Gets a little bit complicated, but hang in there, I know you can do this. Now I probably spelled these things wrong, but there are 3 very important measurements that you need to keep in mind when you're making your Precursor Orb. The first one is the base height of your orb. and that is measuring from the base or the bottom of your Precursor orb to a little less than halfway up the orb. For me, my orb measured in at about 2 1/4 inches. So I'm going to write down that number. Pardon the sloppy handwriting, I'm writing on a not flat surface. There we go. The second number that you need to know is the circumference of your precursor orb, which you would get by measuring from this point all the way around, from this point to this point here, to measure around your orb. And my circumference came in at a little less than 13 inches, and I decided to round it down to about 12.75 inches. And that is because I'd rather have a little bit less than a little bit more, and you'll understand that once you understand what this measurement is. The last measurement you need to know for making your precursor orb is the length of each of the 4 lines. So I have these here. And to find this number, what I'm going to do is take my circumference here and divide it by 4, since there are 4 lines. But we also want to account for those little diagonal lines, so I'm going to round it down a bit. For the length of my 4 lines, if I divide this number, I get about 3.18, which I'm going to round down to about 3 inches. Now that I have all the numbers I need to make my orb, I can go to town and actually make the darn thing. So, gather your information, and then we'll go on to the process of creating these lines. Now that I have all the important measurements figured out, and I have marked my base height on my orb on each side, as you can see, there's a mark here on this side for the base height, and directly opposite of it, there is another one marked. Now what we're going to do is figure out a way to create a straight line that is the precise length that we want it to be. So we know that for this orb, we need a line that is 3 inches across. And if you look at the center of 3 inches, we have 1.5 inches. So we're going to line this up, 1.5. That's approximately how long from here to here, oops, our line is going to be. So we are going to take a little bit of paint, and we are going to take a toothpick, and we're going to mark out 1.5 inches on each side of this dot. After you have marked out the length of your line, we're going to make sure that it's this exact height we want, so you don't have a sloped line. So set your orb up right, and then take your protractor or ruler. We're going to measure to make sure it lines up. That one's a little bit too high, so what we're going to do is we're going to lower it a bit, but keep it the same distance from the center line. This is much easier to do when you're not filming, so you'll have a much easier time than I'm having right now. Blink. Okay, and now what we can do is we can scratch off this one. Oop, it's a little off-centered. I'm gonna scratch this one off because it's still a little bit wet. I'm just gonna actually scooch this one over a little bit. And we're just gonna wipe that one off. So that one's where we want it. Now it's time to do this one here. We're going to measure to make sure it is exactly where we want it. As you can see, it's a little bit too low. So we're gonna get some paint, just a dot of it, and then make adjustments so it's this right height and over to the same side you want it to be. We now have 3 points that we can use to create a straight line for our precursor orb. They are approximately the same base height, and they're the same distance from our middle mark. Now repeat this on the opposite side. After you have marked out your points and the paint has dried on them, grab your painter's tape because we are going to make some straight lines for our precursor orb. So pull off a piece of painter's tape that is about 3 inches long or longer, then rip it down the center. Now what you need to do is line up all 3 points. Do not have to be perfect. And then do one on the bottom and make sure that you have the straight edges pointing towards your dots on both the bottom and the top. Give yourself a little bit of room because we want our line to be relatively wide. This looks pretty good to me. Now what you need to do is you need to really just push down on the edge of that tape so that when you go to paint this line in the center, you don't have any paint bleeding and running off and creating an uneven line that looks choppy and gross. So just roll your finger over it, make sure that is really sealed on there good. Now take some of that brown paint, put it on a toothpick or a paintbrush, depending on whatever you want to do, And we are going to lay down paint from this point here all the way to this point here. So you're just going to fill in this line from point to point. Now remove your painter's tape carefully and see how you did. Look at that nice, beautiful straight line. And that looks fabulous. Look at that. Looks like a little tiny meh face. Yeah. Now we're going to repeat what we just did on the other side. I'll see you back when you're done. Now that both of your lines have been made and your Precursor Orbs paint is dry, we're going to move on to making the second batch of lines, which will be slightly underneath the other set of lines. So in order to do that, we'll need to do some more measuring. But don't worry, it's not as math intensive as previous measurements. I'm going to bring this in a little bit closer so you can see it. What we're going to do is take our ruler or protractor and line up the 0 mark on the top of our line. So up here, not down here, up here. It's going to be on the top of the line that you have made. Mark that up here, and as you can see right at the 1/4 inch mark, I have a little dash I have created, and I am going to mark that off with paint right there. So I'm going to do that off camera since it's hard for me to do it on camera, then we'll be right back. Okay, I've measured a 1/4 inch down. Now what we're going to do is line up the 0 with the center of that dot, and we're going to measure a 1/4 inch over to the side. Now we have a dot that is a 1/4 inch down, and then a dot that's a 1/4 inch over. You don't need this one anymore, so just erase that from your life. You can use a damp paper towel to get any extra stuff off if you want, but I'm satisfied with that. And then we're going to do the same on this side here. So 1/4 inch down, 1/4 inch over, and then the same on these 2 points here. Once your dots have dried, we're going to see how close we are to our 3 inch desired line length. Take this, there, and we are almost exactly at 3 inches, as you can see, which is pretty awesome. Since we now know that these are the exact distance apart that we want them, what we're going to do is take our measuring tool again. Yes, there's lots of measuring. And we're going to try to measure the height from the base to this little dot here. Hold upright, and it looks like a little dash above 2 inches here, and about the same here. So that means somewhere in the center we want to put another dot that is just a tad bit above 2 inches. Okay, it's not perfect, but it's good enough for me. I'm gonna try to keep this from rolling off the table again. Now grab some more of your painter's tape. We're going to do exactly what we did last time. So split your painter's tape in half, and we are going to attempt to make a straight line from this dot all the way to this dot that is the same height and not going this way or anything like that. As you can see, I did get rid of the 3rd dot in the middle. I just decided I didn't really need that guy, so he's gone. But this looks pretty straight to me. I'm going to flatten down the painter's tape to make sure that it is on there good so we don't have any bleeding. Take my nail, roll it across there. Don't know why I put nail polish on today. And then once that's down there good, we're going to add our paint. In this orb, you can see there's a much steeper incline between this line and this line, but you know what? I think it'll be workable. I think it'll look fine. If I need to, I'll just wipe this line off completely and maybe go down a little bit further and redo it. Or I can either take another layer of painter's tape, put it slightly under this line, make the line a little bit thicker and make it go down, and I can put another layer up here on this one, make it go thicker and be a little bit up higher. After the paint on all of your lines have dried, we are going to make our little diagonal line that connects our lines. And to keep it nice and straight, we're going to take some more painter's tape and we are going to stick it like this. I know that's not a very specific term, but basically you want to connect the top corner to this piece and this bottom corner to this piece and make sure the line in between is even. So we'll take another piece. And I didn't do it perfectly, but I can't see well, so I have an excuse. Okay, it should look a little something like this. You have a nice diagonal line created, and we're going to do this exact same thing for all other pieces of our Precursor orb. Then we'll add the paint. I have marked off the areas that I need to paint, and I have pushed the painter's tape down really well so nothing bleeds through and we can create some nice, sharp, diagonal lines. Then we'll take our handy dandy toothpick and some of our dark brown paint called Vanilla Bean, and we will fill in the areas from brown line to brown line. And for the satisfying part, peel off your painter's tape and see the fresh and beautiful lines you have created. If some of your paint did bleed through, you can take the opposite end of your toothpick and kind of just level it out, scratch it up a little bit, and boom. And now for what's probably the most challenging part. We are going to have to freehand this little squiggly line that goes around the top of the precursor orb. You can use a toothpick for this or a paintbrush, but it is going to take a lot of patience. Do not expect perfection because you will not be achieving it. Do your best, and I highly suggest that you have some damp paper towels on hand. Basically, we're going to be making rainbows and upside down rainbows. Rainbows and upside down rainbows. Just keeps continuing all the way around. And I have about 4 rainbows and 4 upside down rainbows. You can do more, you can do less, whatever just meets in the middle and looks somewhat symmetrical. After you have finished putting on the swirly paint accent on the top of your precursor orb, you're ready for the next step, which is to put the writing on your orb. So this is writing from the precursor language. It reads on the top, naughty, then here, dog. I like to put little diamonds in between to separate the words. And then down here, traditionally, it would read, let's see, it says mad man, and I added in Jak because I had extra room, but usually it would say naughty dog, mad man. These will be smaller, these will be larger, but you can write whatever you would want to be put on there. So figure out what you want to write, and then we are going to grab some more dark brown paint. We're gonna put it over here on our really messy piece of wax paper. And then depending on the size of your orb, you can either use a toothpick to write, or in this case, since my orb is pretty large, I'm going to use a small paintbrush. Now I'm going to do my best to write all of these words without messing up, since it's hard to do on camera, and we'll see how this goes. You're going to have to freehand this, so just do the best you can, unless you want to try printing out a stencil, but that'll probably be quite annoying. Thing we're going to do is mix together these two paints to make our own unique blend of paint to add to the center of the lettering on our precursor orb. So there's no specific formula for this, just want it to be a different color than the other colors you have on your orb, and you also want to make sure that you have a lot of it. That way you don't have to try to remix the same color that you just made. So I'm mixing together my rust and my vanilla bean. Take your toothpick and mix it up really good. And as I'm sure you've probably already guessed, we are now going to take this paint that we made and we are going to paint the inside of the area we just painted, leaving a small area left of the vanilla bean paint. And this will just give the lettering some extra dimension to it. This is time consuming and honestly it is optional, but I think it looks pretty nice. Only 2 more more steps and then you are done with your precursor orb. Grab some of your vanilla bean paint. Grab a paper towel and crunch it up. And what we're going to do is we're going to take some of this vanilla bean paint and we're going to streak it over our orb to give it a kind of antiqued look, like it's been through some serious stuff. So this is kind of something you do at random. You can do a tapping motion, then tap on the reverse side, swirl, do some streaks, wipe it off. Just want it to look kind of dirty. If you have any cracks too, that'll work to your advantage. Fill in the cracks with some of that stuff. Brush it off. You're gonna have some real fun at this. So we're just trying to make it look like it's been through a lot of stuff. Once you're satisfied with the antique look of your paint, grab your varnish. This one is my weapon of choice. It's very durable and very glossy. We're going to put on a minimum of 3 layers, although honestly, I like to do something more like 10. Make sure you have a window open for this because you do not want to be breathing this in. I'll link this in the description box for you. Thank you guys for watching this tutorial on how to make a precursor orb. I will see you the next time that I see you because I post whenever I feel like it on this channel. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.